What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's a good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here, and the New York Jets released their first unofficial depth chart yesterday. Emphasis on unofficial, and I'm always intrigued by what that actually means, or more so what goes into crafting that depth chart and putting it out. You'd have to imagine that nobody's going for the shock and awe factor or anything when they create it, but I wonder just how much they're holding back, or how much objective truth is supposed to be there. But diving into what we have here, there's a couple of intriguing things that came to mind. And the first one is when you just look at who's in that first string, second string unit, and with this coaching staff being heavily infiltrated by former players, right? And you hear a number of players talk about the pressure and or stress of someone always coming for your job, and many players willing to omit injuries or come back sooner or lie to get back on the field so that they don't risk losing their job to someone that maybe has a standout performance, or just overall if they've had availability concerns. So I'm curious if this is kind of the coaching staff's way of letting these players know, until live bullets are flying in these preseason games, for example, or joint practices where things are going to matter a little bit more. Is this their way of kind of protecting them and letting them know we're not just taking name value or headline players over those that we feel have been performing more consistently? Or is this a message of meritocracy, right? And I say that because there's a couple of depth chart question marks, I would say, just looking at it. For example, Malachi currently over Aryan Smith, and really you can put any other receiver that was in the third string or lower behind him, because outside of Corley having a touchdown and more recently a pretty decent chunk gain run after the catch, it feels like he's done next to nothing, right? My understanding is that there's still been a ton of penalties, drops, for example, and just overall he doesn't feel like he's really meshed with this new coaching staff and maybe the play calling that's there. It definitely hurts him that he wasn't really available for the entirety of the OTAs as well. And that a lot of other players ahead of him have been shining, right? A combination of veterans, draft picks, etc. So curious. And then Ruckert over Mason. This one feels more so like the, give it to the veteran kind of excuse, I suppose, and make it overwhelmingly proven that Mason Taylor is just a better performer than him coming out of the gate. But you have Garrett Wilson, who came out recently with some comments that he's going to be a huge deal for us, came out pretty much NFL ready, as it's been nothing but consistent over the course of camp. And even for the people that want to pull up the handful of drops that he's been having over the last couple of weeks or so, when you go back and check out the commentary or the beat writers, or on the occasion that I guess we have film maybe, a lot of it has been marked as, a ball being kind of outside of his reach, or it's been thrown slightly behind him. And so catches you love to see him come down with, but not one that's out of the realm of blaming the quarterback. And in these cases, Justin Fields more so than Mason Taylor. Plus, Jeremy Ruckert is kind of in this weird pseudo battle in my purview of him facing Andrew Beck in more of this hybrid tight end role, hybrid tight end / fullback, more so than being in competition with Mason Taylor. But being the veteran of the tight end group, we'll see how that plays out. And then someone like Gibson over Kenyan at the kick returner position. A very underrated one, Kenyan Nwangwu, who we picked up at some point around midseason last year, I believe, was able to come in as soon as he got the chance, get himself a return touchdown, but kind of true to why he hasn't been super star-studded over his career. Health concerns crept up, right? Caught an injury, was placed on IR. We haven't really seen him since, but I would imagine he'd be the default guy because he's generally speaking, historically, one of the best kick returners in the NFL. So with 5 or 6, I want to say, touchdowns to his name, it feels like another one of those kind of meritocracy type situations potentially. And then there's some stuff that stood out to me just in terms of like position placement, or any other manner of things. The new not new UDFA, but the new UFL pickup, Liam Foridel. Now, he's a guard through and through, has played a combination of left guard or right guard. And I would imagine you look at him and, between the build, between hearing about the smarts, and kind of seeing how he's progressed since joining the XFL, UFL. You'd imagine he probably can moonlight at center, but they do currently have him as the third string. And so my immediate thought is that this is a replacement for Gus Hardwick, our UDFA center that caught a lower leg injury and ended up being waived with an injury designation. But maybe this is the coaching staff making sure that they have an emergency option for, if something happens. Maybe the immediate plan, I would imagine, if something with John Simpson or AVT happens long term, is that Joe Tippmann can move. Then you bring in Myers as your new center, and then you want a replacement after him that you can call up from the practice squad or something of that nature. But still a curiosity. I would have loved to see him at guard just based on the play and some of the stuff I broke down in my video when we picked him up. But for a guy that was probably going to be a third or fourth stringer at best anyways, coming in with some work to do to try to gain leverage on any of the existing players, I'm not mad at it if it finds him a way to get on the field. Max Mitchell, he returns to left tackle, and I would imagine this is more so just a swing tackle situation, but he's always seemed like he's been more comfortable at right tackle. He's had some of his best matchups, for example, at right tackle, shutting down guys that gave us a lot of hope before the next week turning back into a turnstile. So I'm sure the position flip doesn't necessarily help him per se, but still notable that he's also over someone like Carter Warren, who was one of Damian Woody's guys, not a year or two removed ago. So curious, we'll see how it all plays out. Again, Max Mitchell could just as quickly be gone off this roster and replaced with someone else as a waiver wire pickup as him actually being one of the primary swing tackles here. UDFA Marcelino McCurry-Ball, he's beating out a former first rounder in Jamin Davis, as well as draft pick Zaire Barnes and any number of other players, like draft pick Kiko Mauigoa, for example. But he's a guy that's not foreign to me, right? I've highlighted him over the course of these training camp breakdowns where he's been making a ton of plays, just objectively speaking here. Not only has he been in on a ton of turnovers, but he just seems like he's really kind of grown into himself within this coaching staff specifically, and has made noise early and consistently. And so with consistency being one of those primary words we see getting tossed around a ton here, I love it, right? Any UDFA story where you're seeing a success where a guy should be able to get on the field is huge. And also, let's keep in mind, right, we don't exactly know what the playing style and schematics and all that stuff are going to be specifically, so preseason will help enlighten a lot of that. But just because McCurry-Ball here is also mentioned as a starter doesn't necessarily mean he's going to see a ton of snaps, right? This could be a guy that's looking about maybe 20 to 30% on the year, depending on if we're running more 4-2-5 stuff or just what ultimately ends up happening. But big ups to him. Really proud of him and the work he's been able to do, and I can't wait to see him in a preseason game and see what exactly we were getting on the practice field in a game-like setting. And then we kind of have an answer, right? Byron Cowart is the main DT next to Quentin Williams, and this was a name that we heard highlighted, I want to say towards the end of OTAs, mid to end of OTAs, where he was separating himself from the unit of having guys like Jay Tufele and Derek Nottie that we brought in. And with this also being our new defensive line coach's guy over from the Bears, you can connect the dots and see that maybe he's adjusting to the scheme and what he's asked to do a little bit better, because he's already worked with his position coach, albeit that as a DC, and it's just a comfortability thing. Plus, it's not necessarily the most unexpected thing in the world. He definitely felt like he still had some untapped potential based on what we got to see with his Bears experience. And also he can pull on a lot of other stuff because a lot of the guys that we brought over have been well-traveled, journeymen. So if nothing else, experienced player. I'm hoping that we, much like I've said with every other guy that we've signed since, I'm hoping we kind of get a Quentin Jefferson type revival or, career year out of whoever it is that ultimately ends up winning this. But this feels like one of those safe locks where Byron Coward is probably going to be the guy once we do start getting official depth charts released. And then Nick Folk. I feel like many of us believed he was going to be the starter instantly once we signed him, just based on what he's done with the Titans. But I'm sure it didn't hurt him that he walked into his first practice and kicked 6 of 6 field goals to go perfect for the day. And the practice or 2 since, of course, hasn't been great. I think he missed 1 or 2 over the green and white scrimmage and or the practice before that. But overall, familiarity with Aaron Glenn, Chris Banjo spoken glowingly of him. I'm not really surprised. And really, if Memphis was to beat him out in camp, I think that would probably be more of the shocker than anything else. But let me know what you guys thought, what takeaways that you had looking at this unofficial depth chart. I'm curious when the next update we get is going to be and if we see any kind of drastic changes. But with that said, again, let me know what you guys think. I'll catch you again. Peace.